Members, we have a quorum. Let us invite the officials into the room, and also the representatives from the airport authority into the room. Let me remind you that according to rules of procedures 83A, if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest, you should declare the interest before you speak. First of all, may I welcome the Secretary for Transport and Housing, Professor Chung, the Undersecretary, Mr. Yao, the Deputy Secretary, Mr. Wallace Lau, and also the CEO of the Airport Authority, Mr. Fred Lam, the Executive Director, Corporate Development, Mr. Wilson Fong, and also Mr. Peter Lee, General Manager, Environment. The Secretary is to attend a hearing. After he has spoken, he will leave at about 9. I hand over to you, Mr. Chung, Professor Chung. Thank you, Chairman. The Hong Kong International Airport is one of the busiest airports. It's the busiest freight airport in the world and the third largest passenger airport in the world, and it exceeds 63 million passengers last year, an increase of 6%. The total APM exceeded more than 390,000, and the freight handled more than 4.38 million tons. In the first 9 months, the number of air traffic movements more than 300,000 and passengers handled more than 51 million, an increase of 4% and 8% respectively in comparison to the same period last year. This shows that our airport has more and more passengers and goods going through, and it's expected that the runway system will reach capacity say next year or year after next. And we've already reached the operation of 68 APM per hour in comparison to Changi, Yinchuan in Seoul, Taoyuan in Taipei, and Pudong in Shanghai, and Baiyun in Guangzhou, and Bao'an in Shenzhen. They are expanding actively. In comparison to such competition, if we do not want to lose the position as a hub, thereby undermining competitiveness, we need to build the third runway ASAP. According to assessment, from 2012 to 2061, in this 50 years, it will bring about 450 billion additional economic benefits and 80,000 direct and indirect jobs. With the two-runway system to be moving towards capacity, we need to implement the 3RS. Otherwise, we will not be able to meet new demand. The airlines may not develop new routes and just focus on profitable routes, and some airlines may move to other airports. If that's the case, then the choice of the passengers will be reduced. With regard to the constraint imposed by sessions, air flight sessions, the new economy airlines will have no room for development. Without the third runway, Hong Kong passengers will be substantially restricted in their choices. In fact, the Airport Authority since 2008 has appointed consultants, professional consultants, to conduct studies in planning the 3RS. There has been wide consultation across different all spectra of society. In 2011, the SSRC of Hong Kong U conducted an opinion survey. It showed that significantly more people prefer the third runway. The CE in March, this year, having considered the proposal of the AA, the design of the 3RS, the EIA, and also financial arrangements, have just decided that there is a need for building the third runway in order to enhance Hong Kong's competitiveness as an international air traffic hub. And the AA is asked to find ways and means to implement the third runway. In fact, the AA has comprehensively started its planning work, including detailed design and other necessary advanced works and statutory procedures. Since the DEP issued the EP last November, the AA has been actively complying with the undertakings in the environmental EIA and also the terms of the EP, environmental permit. They will go along the direction of development together with alongside conservation. Mr. Chairman, the 3RS is not just building one more runway. It also covers the following. In the northern Airport Island, there will be a reclamation of 65 hectares. This is half the size of the airport. There will be also aprons and airfields, the people mover, and also baggage handling system, expansion of Terminal 2, and comprehensively upgrading existing airport facilities. The scale is as big as building a new airport. According to the assessment of the AA, the cost, money of the day, is $145 billion. This will be conducted through a share contribution approach, and that is fairer than just putting the burden on the taxpayers. The cost of funding includes the capitalizing on the AA rating of the airport by borrowing in the market. It will also make use of operating surplus of the AA, and also there will be an airport construction fee imposed on passengers. In view of the concern towards the level of the airport construction fee, after surveys and interviews, the AA has decided to substantially reduce the ACF and charge different levels of fees according to long haul, short haul, and different type classes. The majority of passengers will pay $90 or less per person. And the details, the AA is still working on the detailed financing plan. Now, the 3RS is of a big scale, is costly. We understand members' concern and the concerns of the public, but we believe that the 3RS should be subject to the supervision of this council and members of public. The AA and the administration are willing to report to the council on a regular basis on the details of the 3RS and its progress. In August, this administration has also set up a consultation committee of airport development and third runway so that professionals and people from different sectors can give their advice to the AA and monitor the implementation of the 3RS. The committee had its first meeting in September, and the second meeting will be conducted at the end of this month. With your permission, if I may invite Mr. Fred Lam, his colleague of the AA, to update you on the latest development of the 3RS. Yes, Mr. Fred Lam, please. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members. I will spend about 10 minutes with the aid of the PowerPoint to brief you on the situation of the 3RS. As said by the Secretary, in 2010, we made a specific proposal on the 3RS. Up till now, 5 years have elapsed. In our Master Plan 2030, we proposed two options. One is to enhance the present 2RS, the other is to build a 3RS. And in the options, we also highlighted the pros and cons and merits and demerits. After 3 months of consultation, after 190 odd briefings, and after inviting the Hong Kong U to conduct a detailed analysis, the conclusion was that 70% of the respondents, or 70% of the respondents through the questionnaires, were of the view that we should build the three-runway option. And according to the consultation outcomes of the past few months, we propose to the EXCO on the three-runway system, and the EXCO has approved the 3RS as the future development option. The EXCO also required us to do three things. First, the EIA. Second, a detailed design. And third, financial arrangements. In the past 2 years, we have been working hard on these. And let me update you on these three areas. First, on the EIA, the DEP stated 12 key assessment aspects. With regard to EIAs in Hong Kong, that was the most comprehensive. In the past 2 years, we conducted more than 700 public events.
We explained to the public what the new scheme will be like, and we also listened to the views. There were two consultation platforms. One was technical briefing group, and the other was community liaison groups. We tried to gather views from the community and professionals, and a number of meetings have been held. As for the EIA, we have put together over 250 initiatives to address the environmental issues. And in November last year, the Director of Environmental Protection granted an environmental permit to us. And 56 conditions were set. So the Environmental Protection Department has imposed some very stringent conditions on the 3RS. As the Secretary said just now, for the 3RS project, well, although we call it three-runway, it's more than building an additional runway. It's almost like building a brand new airport next to our existing airports, and it covers 7 related works. First, 650 hectares of land will be reclaimed, and a runway and taxiway will be built. There will be a new passenger concourse and apron. And Terminal 2 will be expanded. A new automated people mover and baggage handling system will also be built. As for the cost, if we calculate in accordance with the 2010 figures, it would be $84.5 billion. But it takes 8 years to complete the whole project. So the MOD will be $141.5 billion. Financial arrangements. We adopt a joint contribution and user pay principle. As the Secretary said just now, is a fair arrangement because 70% of the airport users are not Hong Kong citizens. However, they will be making certain contribution to the construction of the new runway. So we have come up with this arrangement. That is, we will be raising debt from the market, and also operating surplus will also be used, and also there will be an introduction of a new airport construction fee, ACF. As for our operating surplus, it will account for 33% of the whole financial arrangements. ACF, it will be about 26 billion, and it will account for 18%. Borrowings will be about $70 billion, and it has taken up the lion's share. It will account for 49% of the whole financial arrangement. I think we are also very concerned about ACF. We have listened to the sector, and we have also conducted an opinion survey at the airport. The outcome is that people would like us to charge according to flying distance. So lately we have announced our latest regime. For long-haul first business class, the ACF is $180. For economy class, $160. As for short-haul, economy class, $90. Transit passenger, $70. So according to this regime, 80% of passengers would pay $90 or less. Lastly, I would like to talk about this. According to our earlier projection, by 2020, our capacity will be reached. That is, the airport's handling capacity will be saturated. However, we have looked at the latest growth in passengers, and it seems that it's growing faster than we expected. And according to the airport design, the original ATM was 420,000, and in 26 we will be reaching this capacity. So it is urgent for us to build the 3RS. In the past few years, we have never stopped adding facilities to our airports to cope with the needs. We have added a number of terminals, and now we are adding a midfield development, and there will also be a concourse there. So over the past few years, we have been adding different facilities. However, the biggest bottleneck in the coming years will still be the ATM on the runways. So if we do not have another runway, the capacity problem cannot be resolved. As for the airport's contribution to the economy, according to our 2012 survey, for the direct and indirect contributions to Hong Kong, the amount was 94 billion Hong Kong dollars, and it accounted for 4.6% of Hong Kong's GDP. Now, with the 3RS, 123,000 jobs will be added, and it will bring about an additional economic benefits of $450 billion. Now, we'll still have to do 2 gazettos, and now we are still doing the work. If everything goes smoothly, we hope that by the middle of 2016, work in these 2 areas can be completed, and we will be making submissions to the Executive Council. It will take 8 years for the whole project to be completed. So after 8 years, that is after the approval of the EXCO, the 3RS will be completed. Thank you, Mr. Fred Lam. Now, several members have raised their hands. Clark? Yes, Mr. Champion Lam. I'm sorry, the speaker is off mic. I said just now, if you have direct or indirect conflict of interest, please let us know. Mr. Yik Chi-ming has also declared his conflict of interest. So 4 minutes for each member. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. For the 3RS, the community is still querying its maximum capacity. We have heard from the airport authority that if they have to comply with the IAI safety requirement, our present ATMs under the 2RS is 68. And the maximum number of ATM in a year is 420,000. It is said that theoretically our 2 runways can support 86 ATMs. I have heard these figures on several occasions. Now, if it's 86 is actually a theoretical figure, there must be no obstructions in any way. So what is the exact figure? Is the maximum ATM 86, or is just a theoretical figure? It can never reach 86, and 68 is already the maximum figure. And Chairman, for last year's figure, 2040, the ATM was 391,000. So when it's compared with 420,000, that's just a small difference. And if this year's growth rate is 5%, then it's already 410,000. So if saturation will be reached next year, I don't think it's an overestimation. And if we can start building the 3RS next year, I still have a lot of queries, because now the 3RS is facing 7 judicial review challenges. So after saturation, is it still possible to improve our service? Mr. Fred Lam said that we are facing a lot of challenges, and if we do not have a third runway in 8 or 10 years' time, then how can we compete with other airports? I think we will be losing out. Secretary, if you look at Annex B and C of the paper, you can see the existing capacity of the 2RS and people's misunderstanding about the capacity. Now, somebody mentioned 86. That was in 1992 in the airport's master plan. That was before the construction of the new airport, and it was a theory. So under different conditions, there will be different capacities. So according to the paper, the capacity is governed by the topography surrounding the airports, and is also subject to the safety requirements issued by the IAIA. And we have talked to overseas aviation experts, and the conclusion is that the maximum capacity is 68 ATM per hour. Now, we have asked the Civil Aviation Department to look at this again. Now, technology is developing. Is there still room for growth? But the bottleneck lies with the runway. If the capacity of the runway does not increase, even if we increase a lot of apron facilities, it will not help. So that's why we need another runway. Now, if today we already have 3 runways, then there will be more ATMs. Mr. Yu Siwing. Thank you, Chairman. Lately, I've heard complaints from the sector. The Secretary said that next year or the year after next, our airports will be saturated. Actually, now many slots are already saturated. The sector hopes that the planes can stay at the Hong Kong airport for a longer period of time, for several more nights, but the airport told them that there are no more parking positions, so the planes have to fly to Macau. And also some airlines want to increase the number of flights during festive seasons, but it's impossible. The AA tell them that you have to fly out after midnight. So when it comes to the saturation of our airport, it is not a theory anymore. There are not enough parking positions, and some flights have to take up undesirable slots. Now, for these 2 issues I mentioned, what kind of solutions does the AA have? Now, because the Hong Kong International Airport is playing a very important role internationally. Now, there are many more transit passengers going through Hong Kong. So many airlines are taking passengers from the mainland, and they would transit via Hong Kong and fly to other places. When you compare ourselves to Macau, Shenzhen, and Guangdong airports, it seems that they are now having more advantages. So if the airlines go to this airport, they will not come back to Hong Kong. I think this is a very serious problem. AA? Mr. Redlam? I think we have to do two things. First of all, as the Secretary said just now, our designed maximum capacity is 68 ATMs, and each year 420,000 ATMs. When we have hired a consultant, we hope that he can try to find out if there is still room for growth under the present technologies. Of course, this cannot replace a third runway, but we hope that we can still increase a bit. If we can increase 1 or 2 ATM per hour, then if you look at it in a year, the quantity is so significant. And now there are restrictions after midnight. So at night we can only have 230 ATMs. That's because of the noise pollution problem. But nowadays airplanes are much quieter. So we are conducting a study. Now, if we do not increase noise pollution, is it possible to add more ATMs at night? If that is possible, it can solve a part of the problems. Other than runway capacity, terminal capacity is also very important.
We are enhancing the capacity of our passenger terminals. The midfield concourse will be completed this year, and then 9 bridges will be installed, and it can process another 10 million passengers in the coming 2 to 3 years. Before the completion of the third runway, there will be some relief. Mr. Dennis Kwok. Yes, Chairman, I have a question concerning the data. Paragraph 15 of your paper said that the economic benefit would be around $1,046 billion and will create 123,000 jobs, paragraph 16. And also paragraph 19, the capital cost is estimated to be $141 billion. My concern, I've heard the numbers before, but I've heard the numbers many times before. How do you come up with the numbers? You need to give us a breakdown. You say $141 billion. Is it realistic? How do you come about? How does it come about? Will there be cost overruns? And how do you come to the number of $1,046 billion in terms of overall economic benefits? Please give us the details, the breakdowns. Mr. Fred Lam. In fact, we have commissioned an independent expert to measure or to estimate the economic benefits. The report is open. So we are happy to provide you the report so that you can look into the details, how the consultant came up with the actual numbers. Maybe I ask my colleague to briefly speak on this later. As for the construction cost of $141 billion, this is a number estimated by our internal experts. This is also estimated by a third-party expert. And the government has also got an expert to check the number. And we think the estimate is reasonable. We are happy to provide the detailed breakdowns with regard to each and every item. There are certain estimates which have assumptions. Say, for example, what's the rate of inflation? That is based on the numbers provided by the government. Now, there are 7 projects, and the cost of each project have been estimated. Mr. Fong will add a few words. Yes, just a little bit in terms of economic benefits. When we publish our MP 2030, we at the same time published the economic benefit report that was done by ESA, our consultant. And we also brief members on that. In 2012, because of change in passengers, we also conducted an updated study. The report is ready, and they're ready for the Council. As for the $140 billion, that will be the main theme of discussion next meeting. I hope that can be a comprehensive analysis. As for how you come up with the $140 billion, I'm happy to do that. Absolutely. Mr. Jeffrey Lam has to attend the EXCO meeting, but he is very late in the queue. Is it possible to allow him to jump the queue first? Okay. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. First of all, I have to declare that I'm a member of the AA. As for the 3 hours, I have the following questions for the AA. All along, you are happy to take questions. Say you're willing to listen. Say originally it was a single charge. Now you have introduced a tiered arrangement for charging. I've heard that the airport is operating near capacity, and you try your best to increase the APMs. Now, as for A305, Airbus A305, the noise and fuel consumption is lower than other aeroplanes. So this is an example. So how can you make use of less noisy aircrafts to use the airport, say, during the early hours of the morning, or you give priority to them? Because during some time, the airport is closed. We don't, or we are near a capacity without the third runway. So will you consider building a fourth runway? So if 3 runways are also operating at capacity, then how can you deal with that? Would there be a fourth runway? There is an accident which happened to the Macau ferry. Now, when you build the third runway, when you do reclamation, how can you make sure that during reclamation, the junk materials will not be drifted into the fairways and therefore causing accidents? Mr. Fred Lam. First, concerning giving priority to landing of aircraft in the evening. According to IATA and ICAO, there are certain procedures for the lifting off and landing of aircraft, and the procedures cannot be changed overnight. We are studying whether there is a need to impose certain fees and charges for noisy aircrafts so as to encourage the airlines to use quieter aircraft. As for the fourth runway, frankly speaking, we have not such a study, and we have no plan for that. We need to do it gradually. First of all, we need the third runway. We need to complete the 3-runway system first. That is the most important task. According to our 3RS plan, it can handle altogether 120 million passengers. And this is already a very big sum, a very big number. During the construction period, will there be junk materials drifting away? The EIA and the environmental permit impose restrictions on contaminating or polluting water quality. The construction method is different from ordinary reclamation. We will adopt a non-dredging approach, and we believe there is adequate protection. Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Now the discussion is on the urgency and the need of the airport. Now the airport is operating near capacity, and it will be saturated, say, by 1 or 2 years. That's a fact. So it's a difference of 1 or 2 years. Now, after it has been saturated, even if you have a third runway, there is still the constraint imposed by the airspace. Today, you have not mentioned that. I hope that at subsequent meetings, you can give us a detailed explanation on airspace restriction. Whether it will be at capacity in 2016 or 2017, there are still you still need 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years for construction. You cannot operate more than 68 APM per hour. So there will be saturation for 6 or 7 years. During that interim period, will you drive away airlines? Will you ask them to use bigger airlines or bigger aircrafts? Or what measures will you have? I mentioned earlier that we are conducting a study to see if we can make use of technology to increase the number from 68 onwards. Even if there is an increase, it will be very limited, maybe at most 70 APMs. Now, if we have 2 APMs, additional APMs per hour, that will be a help for the capacity of the airport as a whole. And the other area is during the evening. Now, in the evening, we can only fly 230 APMs. Aircrafts are quieter. Is it possible to increase the number of flights? If it can, that will be a great help to us. As for the 3RS, we don't need to wait until it is entirely completed before there's an increase in capacity. Now, after we build the third runway, then we will rebuild the second runway. In 2023, 2024, 3 runways will be ready. Now, after we've built the north runway together with the south, the distance with the south runway is about 3 kilometers. So the 2 runways can enhance their throughput per hour. It will not cause any danger because the distance is more than 3 kilometers. So by 2020, after the north runway is built, the new north runway is built, then the capacity of the airport can be raised. As to the extent, we are still studying that, it will be better. Certainly, the 3RS doesn't need to wait until 2023, 2024 before we can see the effect. After the completion of the third runway, before the completion of the whole project, the third runway can still help to expand capacity. When will you be able to tell us the extent of increase in capacity? There must be forecasts. Now, during peak hours, you do have to reject the flights. What is the rejection rate or turn-down rate? From now until 2020, how big will that turn-down rate be? Well, we don't have any specific number. We need to ask the CAD. It will only be in the middle of next year that we will reach the design capacity. After hitting the design capacity, then there will be turndowns. We hope not to do that. And we have to consider how we can increase the APMs per hour. And by 2020, with the completion of the third runway, there will be a substantial increase. And we're studying that, and we'll soon have the result. Mr. Wuchiwai. Mr. Wuchiwai is not here. Mr. Tan Ka-pyo then. Thank you, Chairman. I have 3 questions. It's more technical or more from the perspective of the ordinary people.
香港而家旅客都多啦，航班都好好。
Well, we have direct flights, say, from Hong Kong to Jeju. We are already doing very well. Why we need a third runway? Let's keep the status quo. Now, as for the airline industry, they say that if you don't progress, you decline. If we operate at capacity, then the number of destinations will decline if we cannot expand. I just want to make clear this point. If there is no progress, will there be a decline, or can you maintain the operation at the present optimum level? That's my question. First question. Now, in the paper provided by the administration, there is a note on the expansion plans of the airports nearby. Some even built 5 runways. As for the annual handling capacity, 5-runway system Guangzhou, 80 million. 3-runway system, about 40-odd million. We have 2 runways, and we can handle 660 million. Why by 2 runway we can handle 60 million, and some having 3 runways can only handle about 4 million or 40-odd million? What's the difference? Why? And how can you achieve developing while doing conservation?
Okay.
As for the expansion of the airport, it's a zero-sum game. If we cannot meet the needs of the markets, then the airlines would have to look for alternatives. And naturally, they would choose to fly to other airports. As for our airports, it's an international airport. We are flying to 180 destinations. However, we need to explore more destinations because it will affect Hong Kong's tourism, financial services, trading, etc. So if we do not progress, we will decline. If you look at London's Heathrow Airport, the connectivity was #1 in the past. Now, in the past few years, because they failed to build a 3rd runway, now is being replaced by other airports in Europe. It has dropped to #4 in Europe or in the world. As for the handling capacity of different airports, there are many factors. What kind of aircrafts are used at certain airports? Some airports would accommodate more small aircraft, and the frequency is higher or lower, etc. So these are all the factors. And it also has to do with the design of the runway. So it doesn't mean that if you add 1 runway, there will definitely be much more capacity. And some runways can only be used in summer, some can only be used in winter. As for the third question, development and environmental protection or conservation. Well, now we have done our EIA, and there are a lot of conditions imposed on us. We will do a lot of things to ensure environmental protection, and Mr. Lee will supplement. Thank you. For the environmental permits, there are a number of initiatives imposed. Some have to be carried out during the construction period. Mr. Lam mentioned the non-dredging method for reclamation, and at the Sky Pier, we will ask the high-speed ferry to slow down, and that will create a less serious impact on the Chinese white dolphins. And also, we have to set up a marine ecology enhancement fund, and we have to submit a relevant management plan. So in the course of construction, we will already be doing environmental protection, and there will be a number of measures in place. Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 points to make. Now, even if the 3rd runway is to be built, it will be completed by 2026. And our airport will be saturated in the coming 10 years. So you will have to handle this problem. And also there are numerous competitors. They are fighting for destinations and businesses with you. So I would like to ask the AA, what kind of plans do you have to tackle all these issues? And in the coming 10 years, you will be having a number of remedies. So how can how much capacity can be increased so as to maintain your competitiveness and compete with the surrounding airports such as Shenzhen? And also about air war. You say that the CAD has already confirmed that it has nothing to do with an airport capacity. I think this is not something that the public can be convinced about. And also, you are saying that for the air control transfer point, is it related to the air control capacity of a certain airport? Now, if we have a new air control system, would there be improvement? And would that also improve our capacity? If we use the new system earlier, can our airport capacity problem be resolved earlier? Otherwise, we will have our hands tied in the coming 10 years. I think some of your questions have been answered. That's about number one. And point number two, we will ask both parties to answer. So for your first question, we are now conducting some studies. We hope that in the coming 1 to 2 years, that is before the complete saturation of our airports, we can come up with ways to increase the hourly ATM at the ATM at night. This will allay the saturation problem in the coming few years. As for the 3RS, we don't have to wait for the complete construction of the third runway to see the effect. As for our northern runway, it will be completed in 2020. Is 3 kilometers long. So our ATM will be increased significantly. But if we want to see the 3 runways to be in operation, it will be 2024. So we will advance in a progressive manner, and we will not make full use of the 3 runways immediately. So by 2020, we would see a better situation. As for air war, of course, air war is different from airspace. Air war has no direct impact on ATMs. Well, airlines may have to use more fuel because their aircraft may have to fly a little bit longer, but it has nothing to do with the runway's ATM, and the CAD has already confirmed that. And according to experts' views, this is also the case. Well, next time, I hope that the CAD can explain to you in more technological details. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, later on, under AOB, we have an arrangement, and for each topic we will be discussing it in detail. So this is just an initial overview. If you want to discuss more about air war, we will have another meeting on that. For the northern runway, if it's completed, what's the capacity? Now we are conducting a study because the distance between the 2 runways will be 3 kilometers. So new ways of taking off and landing can be implemented. I'm not going into the details of this, but I believe that the total ATM will increase significantly. Mr. Yik Shiming? Oh, I didn't intend to ask questions. Thank you, Chairman. Just now, I've heard that a lot of benefits will be brought by the 3RM. It's not the fishery industry that will object totally to this kind of development. But whenever we hear airport project or Disneyland project, we would be dissatisfied. It's because your monitoring work is not good. First, you may have an impact on the environment, and second, there may be an impact on marine safety. Now you are building an artificial island, and there are anti-shark nets out there. They are black and they can be rolled up, but you have never collected them, and they are now floating on the sea, and many fishermen have bumped into such discarded nets. So they have to ask you for compensation because they get injured. And every time I talk to you, but you have never done anything in terms of monitoring or handling of the nets. Even in the daytime, we can see such nets being put grounded near the area. So how can you ensure that your monitoring work can be improved? How can you make sure that our fishermen would not have accidents like this anymore? As for the artificial island, it's not an airport project. Yes, I understand, but we see all these problems all the time. Yes, I hear the members' view. In the future, we will ensure that our monitoring will be conducted in a better manner so as to safeguard marine safety. How about the administration? Yes, I can supplement. In the environmental permits, there are relevant requirements. Or, for example, a number of management plans will be in place to ensure marine safety. There must be relevant initiatives to make sure that marine safety is maintained. And we have also been talking to fishermen in the past. We hope that our communication can be enhanced so that we can do a better job in terms of management. Well, Chairman, why am I so pissed off? Well, for the government's projects, every time they would monitor the situation, but we still see so many accidents. So I hope that improvements can be made. Under Secretary, yes, we understand the members' feeling. In the future, when we build the 3RS, and now when we are building the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, there are a lot of environmental requirements. We want them to be very stringent. We do not want to injure we do not want anyone to be injured or even die because of our projects. So if there are any problems, we will try our best to remedy. We understand that the fishermen will tell us as soon as possible when they see this kind of problems, and we will try our best to help. We have very stringent requirements. Every time when an accident happens, we would penalize the constructors, and we would ask them to remedy the situations. We hope that for the 3RS projects, the AA will be abiding by all the rules, in particular when it comes to marine safety. Chairman, can I make a request? I'm afraid that you do not know about the figures. Now, please look at the major projects that are being carried out and ask the contractors for accident figures. Then you will know how serious the problem is. Well, will the administration give us a paper on that later? Mr. Albert-Chan? Mr. Albert-Chan? Thank you, Chairman. I have two questions. As for the 3RS, now we will have to look at the actual effect because it involves the airspace in the Pearl River Delta. What is the situation is still not clear. I wonder if the government can give us a clear picture, and I hope that the government can give us a paper on that. And with the completion of the 3RS, what will the airspace allocation be like? And how about the landing and takeoff routes? Each hour, how many ATMs, has that been confirmed? This is very important. And second, I hope the government can be frank. I hope the EPD can give us more comprehensive information. When the Chalapkop Airport was designed and built, there were a lot of problems. First, noise pollution. At that time, the EIA's result was a far cry from the actual situation. So in 1991, an EIA was conducted and it was approved by the ACE. When the airport was completed, things were different. As for 25 NEF and its extent, can you let us know more about the actual situation? And there were increments each year, so you should give us more data on this. Thirdly, about supervising the construction work. Lately, I've seen some reports about the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. A lot of pollution has been caused by the project. Earlier on, the government told us a different story. It said that the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge construction will be monitored in terms of environmental protection. So how can you ensure that the 3RS will be better? And this would also be a lethal threat to the Chinese white dolphins. I hope the government can submit papers to us concerning all these questions, and I would like to see diagrams and other illustrations as well.
Mr. Yao. Now concerning the questions raised by Mr. Chen, with regard to the PRD airspace, there will be a dedicated meeting to discuss that, and we will provide ample documents to enable members to understand our plan and also the basis for the 3RS. Even with the 3RS, Chairman, yes, I think they are putting the cart before the horse. You've started financing, and you still don't know the actual situation of the 3RS, the airspace for the 3RS. You build an airport before, and yet you don't know whether the airspace will be enough. You really need to know the usage and also the airspace before you build the runway. The administration has been dodging the issue. You just ask us to buy a flat first. Whether you can live in the flat is another matter. That's really absurd. You need to make sure that you can have the airspace before you build the third runway. You just tell the public, we don't have information. We are not sure. Then if that's the case, then tell people that you're just taking a gambit on it. With regard to constructing the 3RS, I notice that the capacity of the 2RS will reach capacity next year or year after next, i.e. 420,000 APMs per year. There's an urgent need to build the 3RS. I support that. In the paper, there is the reference to the issue called the air wall. The administration says that the height of the air wall is irrelevant in respect of the construction of the 3RS. The administration has also said that the minimum height should be 15,700 feet. In 2020, the PRD share airspace in the PRD, and they will reduce part of the height of the air wall or part of that can be open for the flights. By then, the number of APMs in the region will increase from 3,000 to 5,000. That's from a paper provided by the administration earlier. With regard to the reduction of the height of air wall, is this still a goal? How many APMs will be given to Hong Kong with the lowering of the air wall? And what will be the implication on the 3RS and also on the present 2RS operating near capacity? With regard to the issue of airspace, we know this is your concern, and therefore, in our report given to the subcommittee, we will have a dedicated session for discussing that. As for the reduction of the air wall, as we've said in the paper, on page 16, there is a note 13, page 18 of the English version. During the non-peak hours at night, that is from 11 p.m. till 7 a.m., the handover altitude has been lowered from 15,700 feet to 12,800 feet. The reduction or relaxation will enable the planes to spend less time for going into the next airspace. This does not have any direct impact on the capacity of the airport. It only facilitates the crossing of airspace from one zone into another, and thereby reducing the fuel consumption of the aircrafts. As for the details, I think we can wait for the detailed discussion later. Mr. Li Chaoyan, Mr. Chairman, it is estimated that in 2014, 63.3 million passengers in 2014, and then 2030, 100 million. Freight, 4.38 million tons. Now 2014, and then it will raise to 80 million. Passenger throughput will increase 100%, nearly 100%, and also cargo by 100%, and then APMs will also be increased with the CRS. But there are many assumptions. What is your annual growth? How can you come up with the projection that cargo will be increased by 100%, and then passenger throughput will be increased by 50%? As for the air wall, many experts have said that the present cap of 68 APMs is the issue. Now, in 1992, the estimate it was done in 1992. That was just 6 years before the completion of the airport. At that time, the theoretical or the estimated throughput at was over 80 at maximum. At the maximum. Now the secretary said that we will have to talk with the mainland aviation authorities to deal with the air wall issue. I find it contradicting. If the air wall is not a problem, why you need to discuss it with the mainland? The message given to us then was that negotiation on the air wall was necessary because of the constraints imposed by the air wall on the 2RS and also the future 3RS. Suddenly, you've made a turn 180 degree, maybe 360 degree. probably 180 degrees, if it is right. It was a problem, but now it says that it is not a problem. I find it contradicting. So how can you explain that? Mr. Lam, concerning the projection. Air wall is different from airspace. The two concepts are different. Airspace does affect our overall capacity, but the air wall will not affect the throughput of the airport. As for the technical side, we can give a detailed explanation later. In 1992, it didn't project that we could have 85 APMs per hour. The consultants did different scenarios, and one scenario was this. To achieve that, we have to cut the major peaks of Lantau Island. And it was also based on different aircraft mix. The subsequent reports showed that theoretically, if everything was good enough, then we could reach 68 APMs per hour. We've already reached that maximum. In the future, whether we will achieve the projected throughput, my colleague will speak on that. Mr. Fong, concerning the forecast, we did the MP 2030. We made such forecasts. It was done in 2008-2009. It's an average growth rate of 3.2% over 20 years. By 2020, 100 million passengers and about 8.9 million tons of cargo. Our annual growth rate in the past few years was 5.1%. The forecast we did was conservative. It was a long-term forecast, and that included economic cycles, the ups and downs in the economy. The estimate, the forecast was rather conservative. Mr. Chang Han Pan. Now, members have asked about the economic benefits. Some professionals in questioning the express rail's economic benefits also quoted similar numbers. The administration said that building the express rail, there would be economic benefits such and such, but the money spent is more than the economic benefits. So the express rail should be turned into a farm or a shopping mall. The estimates have to be clearly indicated and listed. So please show us the methods in what year and how it can be, how it is derived. Please provide us adequate information.
咁事實上，內地嘅經濟近嚟咧有啲下行。
Now there is a declining trend in the economy, and there are economic cycles. I noticed that you will finance the 3RS, the construction of 3RS by borrowing, by surplus, and by the ACF. Now, borrowing involves the market rating, and also the other numbers are also sensitive to economic cycles. Now, if there is an economic downturn, your incomes will decline. Say, if you cannot raise enough money, then how will you cope with that? The third question is about construction costs. We've seen that the project costs or project estimates are affected by labor supply. When you conduct your estimate, do you base a number on the present labor shortage scenario? The CEO. we are confident with regard to financing or raising funds. There is a lot of liquidity in the world. The airport is operating quite well. We've talked to the financial sector, and the bonds issued by us will be welcomed. We've also taken into account the increase in passengers, as said by Mr. Fong. Our estimate is rather conservative. Say in the first few months, the number of visitors coming to Hong Kong may not be quite good. But in fact, if you look at our airport, we do experience a substantial increase in the first 9 months, an increase of 8.4%. You may feel that mainland visitors have declined, but in fact, mainland visitors coming by air experience an increase of 9%. There has been no decline in terms of the growth rate. For high-end customers, they still have a strong demand for the airport. With regard to the growth in the airport, I think the situation is desirable.
Mr. Michael Tian. I'm sorry I'm late. How many minutes? 4 minutes. I have 2 questions. I hope that you can provide me with some supplementary information, because a lot of residents talk to me. They say that for short-haul economy class passengers, they're very sensitive to price, because sometimes now they can get an air ticket with several $100s. So $90, pretty much. They hope that it can be lowered to $50. Now, if you make the calculations for short-haul economy class, if it's reduced to $50, and now for long-haul first business class, it's $180. How much more do you have to add to it if you want to have a balance? So please give us some information. And of course, if it's as much as $4,000 or $5,000, nobody will support that. So for long-haul premium class, if it's capped at $500, well, because people are saying that if they buy premium tickets, it's always tens of thousands of dollars. So $500 are not much. So how about lengthening the charging period? You can continue to charge passengers. So how much longer will you have to lengthen the charging period if this is the case? Please give us these 2 figures. And I would also like to ask questions on behalf of the 7,000 households living on Ma Wan. Now, the 2 hours noise pollution is a problem which I have been following up in recent years. I have held numerous meetings with the stakeholders. From 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., the take-off noise is quite excessive. And there is a J7 route. However, only special aircrafts can make use of the J7 route. That means when an aircraft takes off, it can make a sharp turn within a very short period of time. That is, it can fly to a high altitude in a short period of time. But this is confined to some special aircrafts. And the CAD say that it cannot restrict the types of aircrafts to be landed here. However, you can provide incentives so that airlines will use this type of aircrafts more. Now there are only 25% of aircrafts like this. In the past, it was 10%. If it can be increased to 90%, then the noise pollution level will be much lowered, and people will not have so many complaints about adding a runway, because now the noise pollution problem cannot be resolved. So if you add an extra runway, they, of course, will not trust you. So if incentive is provided, can you make sure that 90% of the planes taking off between 11 a.m. and between 11 p.m. and 7 p.m. will be this kind of aircraft? Well, the third runway will be moved towards the north, so this will help to reduce noise pollution. As for ACF, now it's reduced to $90. We think it's already very competitive. If you look at our neighboring airports, well, even for the mainland airports, now they are charging 90 RMB. So I don't think there's room for reduction. For the J7 route, yes, you are right. We are talking about 25% of aircraft using J7. We have talked to the CAD and airlines. As for local airlines, that is Hong Kong-based airlines, well, for CX, most of the aircrafts have that device. Now, you need two factors to do that. First, you need to have the relevant device, and the pilot would have received relevant training. He must have enough certificates to do that. So we'll continue to talk to CAD. CAD will encourage that, and the AA will also look into this. That is, at nighttime we will charge a noise charge. So we would encourage the airlines to use quieter aircrafts. And for the money we get from this scheme, we will use to encourage airlines to use quieter aircraft and to train pilots. At the next meeting, before the AA give us a financial arrangements, can you give us some basic information? Well, I need several scenarios. For example, in a financial model, what's the assumption about interest? We have to look at that. So don't just give us big figures. Now in Annex D, now there is a premium of $4.7 billion. Is it a projection? And you can accumulate up to $4.7 billion. And for the debt, will you be issuing a bond? Or will there be different compositions? There's questions for AA. And I have another question for the Undersecretary. Now, if there are 3 runways for the auto track 3, we are now querying this air control system. Will you consider buying another air control system? Because now we already do not trust this auto track 3 system. And the Secretary, with regard to Mr. Leung's second question, now the CAD is final checking the new air control system. The Bureau will monitor the work, and we want to make sure that the new system complies with all safety requirements. I will update members if there's any progress. Undersecretary, can you assure that this system can manage 3 runways? That is the most important point. The design itself is to handle 3 runways. Mr. Freeland? Well, for 47 billion, we do not have that now. We're talking about the income in the coming 10 years. So there are some assumptions in it. CEO, what's the figure now? In the past, we did not have any returning. Last year, it was the first year that we had it. And that's 7 billion. That is from the last fiscal year onwards. There will be some retained earnings. And according to the present financial arrangements, we do not have to raise debts immediately next year. From next year onwards, we will start start to do a more detailed financial plan. We will look at the bond composition in the future, and it may comprise senior bonds, retail bonds, etc. Later on, we'll hire a consultant and more details can be ironed out. Now, when you look at the bonds, I hope that it can be more diversified. Now, there are some new bonds such as green bonds, Islamic bonds, and denomination bonds. If you just tap one bond market, the interest will shoot up, and that will not be conducive to you. Thank you. I think members have asked the AA a lot of questions, and please give us a list of the information you have. Well, if members want a hard copy, please give them a hard copy. Otherwise, you can give us a link. So if you have any information concerning the 3RS, as long as it's already in the public domain, please give them to us. Mr. Abaho, I have a question for Professor Cheung, but he's not here, so I will ask the Undersecretary. I think the public is very concerned about the airspace control. Now, there is a plan for the PRD airspace. This is a tripartite arrangement. That is, the mainland Macau and Hong Kong have formed a tripartite platform to discuss the allocation of airspace, and 2020 is the interim goal. And I understand that they hold regular meetings. Before 2013, there were a number of meetings held. But on Hong Kong's side, some people are very unhappy because these platform is not transparent. We don't know what's been discussed at the meetings. However, Macau is surprisingly more transparent than us. I am now looking at 4 minutes. There are 4 different days: the 31st of August 2011, the 19th of June 2011, etc. And a lot of details are provided in this minutes. I'm not saying that they are great details. However, we still get an idea of what's going on these platforms and how these meetings will impact on Macau. Now, I want to talk about the 19th of June minutes. It says that it has talked about the flying optimization options, the latest development of the runway 16 and the optimization of loading on runway 36, etc. So how come Hong Kong is like this? We are even worse than Macau. A lot of people have asked CAD, but CAD didn't give any answer. However, the Macanese government is answering people's questions. So why are we like this? We have 4 airports in our neighborhood: Zhuhai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and Macau. People are very concerned about the airspace because we have 5 airports here. So in the future, what will the regulatory regime be like? There is no basic transparency. How can you assure the public? Well, can the Undersecretary tell us why the government is not telling us anything? We are worse than Macau. With regard to Mr. Ho's question, that is not a fact. Now, for the tripartite working platform, whenever there's any concrete progress, announcements will be made by the CAD, in particular if Hong Kong is involved. I can cite an example. Lately, on the 20th of October, We discussed about the regulation of airspace in the PLD, and we have added a new transfer points in the Eastern China routes. So from Hong Kong or Macau, if you fly to the mainland, in particular the Eastern coast, initiatives are now in place and the capacity has increased. So last month we made an announcement. This is totally related to the allocation of airspace. As for the past reports, if members want to see them, we can dig up the relevant documents for members' reference. Yes, please give us the papers about these past meetings of the tripartite platform. Mr. Kenneth Chan, Dr. Kenneth Chan. Thank you, Chairman. I have a question. I want to follow up on the relationships between green groups and the AA. Mr. Lam would know that several days ago, 11 green groups jointly made an announcement. That is, they refuse to join the AA's platform because under the environmental permit, the AA has to set up such a platform with green groups. The AA has to listen to more views of the public, including the views of the green groups. These green groups are significant groups. For example, Clean Air Action, concerned groups about Chinese white dolphins, etc. And also, they have been attending public hearings at LegCo. If the hearing is about 3RS, I think I've learned a lot from them. I think it's a great regret that they have now decided not to join your platform, and they have their reasons. I haven't heard any response from the AA. Now, when you were trying to form this platform, were there communication problems? And as a result, the green groups are now boycotting you. They rejected your invitation to join the platform. So have you sought legal advice? Now the environmental permit is given to you, and you will have to carry out a series of work. And one of that is to set up such a platform. It's required by the environmental permit. However, these green groups refuse to talk to you.
What problems will there be, and how are you going to address that? You can give us a supplementary paper on that. What is your thinking? How many groups have been invited? How many groups have rejected? And without some of the green groups, can you still operate this so-called professional platform? And would this lead to legal issues as well? With regard to the groups, which indicated that they didn't want to join the group, we were disappointed. In fact, we did talk to them, and we want to take on board their views, but it's a pity that finally they choose not to join the platform. Concerning Mr. Chen's question, I asked my colleague to give a reply. Mr. Lee, I thank the member for the question. As, with regard to our EIA, we attach importance to the green groups. We have 4 professional discussion groups, and we have 4 expert groups. In fact, the green groups decided not to participate. They have their own consideration. In the expert groups, expert teams, we do have experts and academics giving their views. Even green groups do not want to join the professional or the expert platform. We still have briefings for green groups. In the 2-year EIA, we met with the green groups. We have 34 meetings with individual green groups or several green groups, and we also have roundtable discussion for 5 times. We listen to their views, and some of the views have been adopted in the EIA. At the final stage, they have not participated in our professional liaison platform, but we are invited to. We are asked to invite relevant professionals, and we do have such professionals in our professional platform. We hope that they will participate. The green groups will participate. We will have briefings for green groups even outside the meetings. Can I have 10 seconds? Now you say you're disappointed. They have their own consideration. I think that's too negative. Give us a list. The 22 members, their backgrounds, and also in what way are you going to talk to the green groups? This is very important, even if they don't join your platform. We want to know. I want to know how you accept, how you can take on board their views and incorporate their views in your design. 4 members are present who want the second round. 3 minutes each. Please be quick. I have to draw a line there. We still have some housekeeping issues. Mr. Dennis Kwok. Chairman, a quick point. I just want to confirm this. The airport construction fee. Do you invoke Cap 483 Section 34, the power to impose a fee, or by what, or by other means? No, it's Section 7. Airport charges has a clear definition. Under Section 7, we can impose a fee on the needs of the according to needs of airport. 7.2. Under 7.2, what provision do you invoke? As for the fee, is it a service charge or what? 7.2 does not say that you can impose this fee. The director. Oh, Mr. Fong. We have consulted legal advice. I don't have the provision in hand. I want to know what is the legal basis for you to impose a fee, and what approach will you adopt to impose this fee, to collect this fee? Mr. Tan Ka-pyo, another question has not been asked. It's also not in the proposed items for discussion. Now the businesses working in the airport having difficulties in recruitment, and about 10% of the workers in the airport are FTU members. Now the salaries are too low for the workers, yet transportation fee is very high. So what measures will you give to attract more employees? And what measures will you introduce to give better treatment to the employees? Will you make sure that there will be suitable measures so that there will be people coming to work in the airport? Yes, the CEO. Yes, Chairman, we are concerned about this. With the completion between Moon Chak Lap Kok Tunnel, we hope that there will be substantial improvement to traffic and transport. We are actively working with other employers. We need to plan ahead for the manpower, and through various measures, we give encouragement. It's not just salaries. The working conditions of the airport will be gradually improved, and the AA is willing to make investments so that not only our employees, I mean the employees of the AA, but also the employees of other businesses working on Airport Island can be can find it better. That includes providing more bus service. The airport authority can also do some coordination. As for improvements to condition of service, I hope that there can be some improvement, and also people will find it to have a good prospect if they work on the airport. I hope that there can be an item for discussion on the list. Mr. Sin, on page 19, 49% borrowing, 33% operating surplus. Now some say that the 47 billion operating surplus, part of that should be given to the Treasury. This is also a way of getting around the FC. You need to explain the legal basis for using retained earning to finance the 3RS. As for the $69 billion of borrowing, you've noticed that the I-bonds are very popular. They are retail bonds. Corporate bonds may be less costly in terms of financing. I don't know. Now you say you have a financial consultant to help you with your borrowing plan. But will you consider allowing more citizens to buy the bonds issued by the AA? Well, if the interest is comparable to that of the I-bonds, it will be quite popular. Mr. Lam, the CEO, today I may not be able to be specific. We certainly hope that part of the borrowings will be through retail bonds. As for how big the tranche will be or the interest rate, our financial advisor will look into details before we can make any announcement. At the same time, we also need to find a suitable balance. We need to consider cost. Retail bonds may increase our cost. We need to balance the interests. Michael Tian. Mr. Michael Tian. Chairman, is a follow-up on the two questions I asked earlier. I'm glad to hear from Mr. Fong, who positively responded to a penalty system that is linked to noise. I hope next time you can give me the details of the penalty system and how soon will the scheme be implemented. If I have a timetable, then I will go to listen to the noise to see if there is any improvement. Now, let me explain to Mr. Lam why I asked for such data. It's about justice. Does he notice that on average, the short-haul economy class fare is about $1,500? If it is $90, it's 6%. If it's long-haul premium class, the fare is about $20,000 at least. It's just 0.7%. If it's $160, so it's a matter of fairness. If we impose a fixed fee, then it's a fixed charge that's unfair. But if you account it by percentage, it's really unfair. That's why I have come up with the proposals I made to you earlier. And some did propose that to me. Chairman, I cannot accept Mr. Lam's explanation. He said he was of the view that there couldn't be any change with regard to the $90. I'm not asking for $90. I asked you to come up with some numbers for further discussion. Say if the cost is, if for short haul is reduced to $50, and how much will the how much will be raised for the premium class in order to break even? This is background information for analysis, and then we can discuss the matter healthily. I want to reiterate my demand. I'm not asking for it today.
如果唔係就冇法子下次再作出。
Otherwise, I cannot contribute to the discussion. I think he understands your demand. Mr. Yu Xiwing. Well, concerning environmental protection, according to the AA, they organize many environment-related events covering various 16 areas of EP, environmental protection. There will be a dedicated session for environmental protection. Now, with regard to the 700-odd public events, please divide them according to the 12 categories and who are the green groups who attended those events. Some green groups said that they were not consulted. Was there inadequate consultation, or were they just unhappy with the consultation? We need the details. Otherwise, everybody is just telling their own side of the story, and it's hard for us to assess whether the consultation is comprehensive and objective. The next question is on financing and the $90. I welcome the AA for listening to our view and introduce a tiered charging scheme instead of just a single charge of $180. I hope the AA will give the undertaking that the $90 will not be adjusted upwards. People are afraid that you will get it through initially with $90 and then afterwards you will raise the ACF. Will you maintain this at $90 and you will not raise your fee?
CEO, well, during the charging period, we do not intend to increase the rate. So after paying off the debt for the 3 hours, we will stop charging the ACF, and we hope that this can be done as early as possible. Mr. Wang Tingguang, I support the 3 hours. I think this is urgent. But there are a number of JRs. I want to know how many JRs there are now that is related to 3 hours. And for the AA, has it assessed how these JRs will impact on the construction cost of the 3 hours? CEO, there were originally 7 JRs, now is 6 because one applicant withdrew. What are these 6 JRs? Well, 2 major categories. One is about environmental protection, and the other about the decision made by the Executive Council. Because our courts are very busy, so it will take some time for these JRs to be handled. Now, because there is no ruling yet, so our work is not affected at the moment, but we have made an estimation. If the project is delayed by 1 year, the construction cost will go up by $7 billion. $7 billion a year. Under Secretary, I would like to say something about the JRs. As the CEO pointed out just now we have 6 JRs, and 2 of them are about the EIA report and the environmental permit. The government, the courts have already approved this JRs, and there are some other JRs about ex-post decisions. The government hasn't approved them yet. So, and also there is another JR about Check Lab OZP, outline zoning plan. So there are 3 types of JRs. Okay, I think we can end the meeting now. And now let us look at agenda item number 2, AOB. Days of meetings and proposed agenda, they have been distributed to members. The deadline is 5th of November. It seems that most of you can accept the timetable. So if you have any questions, please talk to the clerk. The next meeting is on the 1st of December, it's the Tuesday. The meeting will start at 10:45 a.m. There are 6 items to be discussed. First is about the 3RS reclamation scope, cost control. And second, financial arrangements. Third, marine conservation, Chinese white governance, relief measures. Third, runway concourse and terminal facilities under 3RS. And then issues relating to Pearl River Delta airspace, and also conclusion and recommendations, including the labor issue suggested by Mr. Tan Ka-Biu. Chairman, I do not object to these items for discussion, but how about the priority? I think a lot of people are concerned about the airspace because that is the premise. If the airspace is congested, as other members pointed out, for example, Mr. Albert Chen, you cannot put the cart before the horse. So can we accord priority to this item, and also can the CAD give us the reference information as early as possible? And the Secretary, yes, I understand that you are very concerned about the airspace. So we have been talking to our mainland counterparts. If we are given more time, then there can be more progress. It would be better if we update members later. In October, there has been some progress. So if you give us more time, we can do more, and then we can tell members more. That would be better for members for consideration. So if we do not discuss it too early, it would even be better off. We have had a meeting with the administration. This is the order of discussion. We also would like to ask members if you want to add anything. Mr. Ho Chun-yin. Well, how about the impact on fishery? When will we discuss that? And how about a public hearing? We can discuss that together with the AIA. I hope that the relevant government officials will attend. Mr. Tan Ka-Biu, Chairman, just now I asked about the manpower needed for the 3RS. So that will be discussed under AOB. Any other comments? If not, we will work in accordance with this list. Just now, Tan Ka-Biu said that a public consultation should be carried out. I have talked to the Vice Chairman and the government, and in April, we will hold a public hearing because we want to let the public know what we are doing. Because if you invite them to come now, we will just be talking about past issues. Members, do you want to pay a site visit? We will listen to the AA's explanation, but now there's no reclamation, so we will just look at the existing facilities. A visit can be arranged. The AA can explain to you how busy they are, and in January the midfield project will be completed. Well, Chairman, if you talk about AA's explanation, actually I'm very interested in CAD's explanation. That is what kind of coordination work that they are doing. Well, they will come to talk to us when we talk about the PLD airspace. So at the moment, we do not need to visit the site. If there are no other questions, we will adjourn our meeting here.